Alrighty. How bad does it smell?
The smelling at the time of the docking, which is the term for cutting off the tails, the smell is awful because it smells just like burned wool.
What do testicles taste like?
They're good.
When they bite them off?
Testicles are, they're very good.
But when you bite them off, don't they bleed?
Don't know.
So tell me, okay. So tell me about your social life before you get married.
Well, before I got married, I was in school, and my family, though we were rich in everything we needed excepting money, we didn't have money, but we did have a wonderful home life. My dad was an excellent farmer. He raised a big garden, and we always went to the Gallatin and in the fall and would get our apple supply for the winter. And my mother was a wonderful cook, and we always had cows. In fact, the folks sold cream, and my mother made butter. And when you went to the grocery store in those days, you did not walk down an aisle. You walked in the grocery store, or at least this is our grocery stores in Dillon. Walked in the grocery store, came to a counter, and there was a little swinging gate for the owner, and you gave him your list, and then these were just staples, of course, because we couldn't afford to buy anything else. And then my mother would sell the butter, and she also dressed hens and sold great big hens, and also sold fryers that were wonderful. And so it was sort of a barter business.
Why did you marry a rancher who didn't own a ranch?
I married Hans because I had lived on a farm, and I liked the farm, excepting, of course, that was during the Depression, when the drought and the grasshoppers and the cutworms and the crops never did materialize to bring any money. And he had a job. You have no conception of an idea of how important it was to have a job, a paying job at that time. And then anyway, I guess when you're in love, you don't stop and analyze every last economic feature of it.
So what was your first impression of Hans?
I was impressed that he was very good looking. He was tall and handsome, and always very neat and clean and well dressed when he came to town.
And let's see. And how did you meet him?
I met Hans when I went to a country dance. There were many country dances in those days, and they were always held in the schoolhouses. And this one was out of town, about 4 or 5 miles south of town. And I loved to dance, and he was a good dancer. That was another plus.
And how did he ask you to marry him?
Well, when he asked me to marry him, I don't remember that he was down on his knees or begging, but he did ask me several times. But at the in the beginning, I was still in college. And so then after I was graduated, and he asked me why, and he just asked me, just said he'd like to get married. And so I said yes.
Good. Right. What was your first impression of Olga?
I had known his family for forever. I mean, I don't mean that. I mean since school, because his family was in school. But Hans was older, and so I didn't meet him until years later. So I had gone through school with his family. Olga was 2 years older than I, so she was a grade ahead of me, and I knew her as a very lovely girl, and a pretty girl. But his cousins, a cousin of his, was my classmate, and I knew her much better, and I thought the family were all nice. And his younger sister told me once that she'd always liked me. I said, why was that? She said that she had, that when we were little, and she was the last one of that family to get to the United States from Denmark. And her head had been shaved at Ellis Island while they waited there. And she couldn't speak English. And she said, there I was, a little Dane without any friends, and with this funny little black cap on my head. And so we loved the monkey bar, the giant stride. That was our favorite playground equipment. And that is like a maypole. There's a big pole in the middle with 4 sets of chains which supported bars that to hold on to. And then you would run as fast as you could. And then finally, when everybody was going fast enough, you'd let go, and then you could swing in the air. So one time, I got off the giant stride and told Christine she could have a ride. I do not remember it. I had no recollection of it, but she told me that. So the littlest thing made us friends forever.
Were you the editor of the paper?
In high school, I was the editor of the paper, and then my brother was also editor. When he graduated from Missoula, he graduated in journalism.
Did Olga work for you in the paper?
Olga was ahead of me, and no, she was not on my staff.
Right. Olga said, what did she say? That she did a reading section. What people are reading, it was called. She would write down what people read. I think she signed up for the class, the journalism class, and therefore had to have an assignment, and you gave her an assignment. You don't remember that?
I did.
That's what she said. She said you gave her that assignment. My understanding was that she took the class, the journalism class. So you probably worked for the paper when you were in the class, right?
Yeah, right.
And you must have been the editor of the paper.
Oh.
And therefore you must have given her the assignment. Don't remember.
See.
Okay, that's okay. All right.
So don't put in there that.
Oh no, I wouldn't have put that in there. No.
That I said she wasn't there.
No, I wouldn't put that in there. So, let's see. I asked you this once before. I'm asking this again about What's the romance like in a log cabin on the ranch?
I would imagine it's pretty much like the romance any place, excepting that going places and having a lot of time for some of the activities people had. We did not have the time. It was just Hans had always had a lot of work to do, and so some people wouldn't think it was very romantic, but you do what you have to do with the time you have.
Was Hans romantic?
After we were married or before? Hans was, he was very affectionate and romantic and danced. We went to dances a lot before we were married, but that soon became less and less because of time and probably time more than anything.
Okay. All right. Can you think of a specific incident, a story about a sheep in danger, or some about? I mean, there were many dangers that faced sheep, right? Is there any specific story that you could tell us to illustrate involving a bear or involving a disease or anything? Nothing in particular.
Sheep are they're very touchy animals. If a sheep gets in an irrigation ditch and cannot get out, and unless it's found, it does not survive. So there is the constant watching of it, and of course on the forest, they're always in danger of predators, of the coyotes and the bear, and the wolves, of course, are the very worst. And I remember when Hans was so delighted when all the ranchers on the Blacktail gave the game warden $50 when he got the last wolf on the Blacktail. And now then, the environmentalists are spending millions of dollars bringing this problem back. They say they pay the ranchers, but but you have to prove the kill. And by the time the rancher gets back out to the cattle and gets the game warden, it's almost impossible to. They say they replace them, but even that, if you are lucky enough to get it done in time, by the loss is greater than they assume it to be. But and the environmentalists have the impression they can train the wolves to stay in the park. There was lots of trouble this year with the wolves in the big hole, and they did move some back to the park, but they do not know that you don't train bison and you do not train wolves. Of course, the bison are certainly no threat, but they think they can train them to stay in the Yellowstone Park. It's impossible. But between the environmentalists and the government, the ranching has become so difficult that every year we are losing working ranches. And the rich people, Ted Turner, Paul Allen, so forth in this area, are they buy the best ranches with the best trout streams, and then it's closed to fishing to anyone excepting their friends. So that makes, well, more and more farmers go out of production every year. I do not know why they do not realize that how much food we are importing from other countries. And when we no longer have control of our own food, we're at the mercy of any country. So the future is not at all bright for the ranchers and the farmers.
Okay. Do me a favor, as we talk about this, let's not use the word environmentalists.
Okay.
Because it polarizes the discussion. You know, it puts...
What about the government?
The government's fine. But...
You can run the government down.
You can run the government down, but when you say environmentalists, then you've got two teams, and then you don't get let's just say people, and then we can...
The people who, what would the word be there?
I don't know. Government is fine.
I mean, it's the government that's pushing the reintroductions.
What did you say?
I think it's the government that's pushing the reintroductions mostly.
That's true with the wolves.
Right?
Because that's fish and game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
The feds.
But would you point out the fish and game? I didn't think that would be good.
It doesn't. No, it's fine.
I don't think so.
They're an institution. But environmentalists, the average person thinks out. Are we rolling?
Yes,
No.
rolling.
But tell me about the relationship between wolves and sheep. What happens?
The wolves are particularly a great threat to any type of livestock. And of course, they also eat the buffalo, any meat. They're a meat-eating animal, and so they are a real problem to the ranchers and the farmers.
How does a wolf kill a sheep or a calf?
They usually, I think it's usually their hindquarters, I believe, that they attack so that they can stop their running, maim them enough so they are forced down. And then the animal isn't really necessarily, does not have to be dead before the wolf starts eating on it.
And how many sheep can you lose to a wolf in a day or a week, or I don't know how you...
I am not sure of how many sheep they kill, but after they start, of course, they do not give up as long as they can have access to the sheep, and they always have access to them when they're on the forest.
And what can you do to keep the wolves away?
The only thing I have ever known of is to not have the wolves. But the government is now, for some reason that ranchers do not understand, they are having reintroduced the wolves.
Will a dog defend the sheep against a wolf?
Oh, no, a dog cannot. No, a dog cannot guard the sheep against wolves.
What do dogs? What can dogs do?
Dogs can, they obey their master's command, which side of the sheep to go on, what they want the dog to do, and to keep them wherever
And
they want.
can a dog guard sheep?
No, a dog is not a guard. Well, there is a type of dog that's a guard, but we have never had them. The Pyrenees are protectors of the sheep. That's a big dog, but not the regular sheepdog is not a guard at all. And some people have llamas now, but I do not know of their ability to guard against a wolf, because a wolf is such a vicious animal.
You don't leave dogs out with sheep.
Oh no, dogs are not left out with sheep, unless it's they just work at their master's command. The dogs are left with the herders, and because they need them. And but when the sheep are on the range and you have another band close, why they mix, and that is another big operation. When the sheep mix, they have to be separated, and it takes a big crew then to get out there and to do that, to cut out the two bands.
Why do you have to keep them separate?
Well, because you don't, no one wants to be feeding the other rancher's sheep, and you just take care of your own sheep.
Can you describe the process of raising sheep? Through the year, what do you have to do?
Raising the sheep depends upon which type of operation you're running, and where your location is. Hans's ranch, our ranch, was high altitude, 7,000 feet, and therefore the lambing had to be done at a later time than the people in the valley who could. And Hans was always a very good person about feeding. If the sheep don't go into lambing, have a lot of hay, good hay, while they are wintering, why then if they're poor, then there's a great chance of the ewe not surviving. And so in the spring, the sheep are brought into the herders at different times bring their band down, and as the ones that are ready to lamb, the closest ones are put into a pen, into a corral, and then when they do lamb, another man picks up the ewe and the lamb, puts it on a, what do they call that? And haul them into the shed where they're put in a jug to mother up. The jugs are made of panels, just a little jug. Many of them are in the shed, and they're in there for until the next day, and then they're put out. The new ones are put in. More sheep are brought into the corral, and it's just a never-ending process.
And what is lambing?
Lambing is in the springtime of the year, depending upon the elevation of your ranch. It's usually set according to that. And it's, of course, when the ewes have their lambs. And if they have two and another ewe has lost her lamb, they take the skin off one of the twins and put it on another ewe. The one that has died, take that skin and put it on a lamb and give it back to the mother, and it smells the same skin. Why, they think that it is their lamb and they will take it. We had one man once who was very new at lambing, because he was alarmed once when he told Hans that this ewe had two tails. This lamb had two tails, because he saw the lamb's tail and the jacket on the lamb. And he didn't understand what it was. And that's called jacketing.
So tell me what that means again, because it was when a lamb has twins and one dies, because they don't always die. The twins don't always die, do they?
No. When a lamb dies, it does not necessarily mean it was a twin. But when a ewe's lamb dies, they would take the jacket off the dead lamb and take a lamb who was a twin or a triplet on occasion. Take one of those and put the jacket on and give it back to the ewe, and the ewe would smell the jacket and think it was her own lamb again. And then
they would move a twin because a mother couldn't really care for two.
No, that was, however, the ewe who had twins, if they were good, strong twins, why they left them with the mother, with that mother. But they would just use one when a ewe had lost her lamb, because then the ewe still has her milk, and so she can raise another lamb. Hans fed the sheep in the wintertime, fed them hay, and they did it with horses, of course, because that was all we had, all anybody had, and a sleigh, because there was always a lot of snow in those years. The climate has changed now, but there always used to be enough snow so that they did haul the hay out on sleighs. Oh. And the hay was loose hay, which means it was wild hay. It was not baled. It was stacked. And stacking, there's very little stacking done nowadays. But however they call the bales that they stack them, that's called stacking. But it's not stacking the loose hay. It used to be 2 stackers on a haystack, and they arranged the hay so that it would shed the water correctly and be a beautiful stack. Those days are gone.
How did you stack the hay?
A beaver slide was used at our place, and one old-fashioned overshot, but that was not the popular one. The beaver slide is made made of wood, and the hay is pulled up by a team of horses, and the buckrake brings the hay in, puts it on the baler, or on, I don't mean that, put it on the poles that hold the hay, and then the horses pull it up to whatever height they wanted and dumps the hay on the stack. And that's called a beaver slide.
Why?
And it's familiar to this area.
Why is it called a beaver slide?
Well, it's certainly a slide, and the beaver has no connection with the operation, with the beaver as an animal. There's no connection. It's just that this is Beaverhead County. Beaverhead men from the Big Hole invented it, and that was just what they named it, was a beaver slide.
How did you learn to bake a pie?
When I was learning to cook, I had never baked pies. And so, of course, my mother had to give me a few lessons on how to make a pie. And I was sorry I hadn't paid more attention to cooking, but I didn't know that was going to be a necessity when I was going to be a teacher.
Okay, good. Did you have trouble with your first pies?
It depended on what type of pie I was making. I remember many of them boiling over in the oven, and of course getting the right temperature of the oven, because of course these were always wood stoves, coal ranges, and to get the right temperature in the oven was a necessity. But if you filled the fruit pies too full, they would boil over sometimes. But the easier pies, especially after I caught on how to make them, and when we were on our own ranch up the Blacktail, then by then we had cream and butter and all that sort of thing. I made lots of cream pies of different varieties with lots of whipped cream on them, and the men thought they were wonderful because most places didn't furnish that much.
Is it hard to make dough, work dough, or?
No, not after I finally got a good recipe. Why, the dough was no problem. We certainly did not buy a pie crust. There was no such thing in those days. Just a little bit now. Just a little bit.
Stand here like I could push.
No, I can do it. They
It'd be pretty spooky staying here. Your mom, you're not around.
enough?
Yeah.